Hello, people, and welcome back to my channel. As you know, I'm a diagnosed narcissist, but with that being said, I am not a licensed professional, so do keep that in mind as I say the things that I'm going to say. So, this video is a long time coming now. I mean, I'm sure you could already anticipate it because I know that a lot of the bits and pieces that I'm going to say here aren't really that different from a lot of things that I've said before. But, you know, us narcissists are very questionable to a lot of people. I'll admit that. The things that we do, our behaviors are always pointed out as something completely alien to, yeah, others. And I guess that's why that's a disorder in general. That's how you get a disorder in general. The way you act or the way you behave is just, difficult for most people to comprehend. So I wanted to make this video because I can definitely see a lot of people asking the question, why is it that a lot of narcissists are, such controlling people or, people that micromanage every single thing that you do and we always have to remain on top. Well, the remaining on top part is obviously very self-explanatory. We want to feel like we're leagues above other people. We want to feel like we're better than everybody, despite the notion that we don't actually like ourselves deep inside, or not even that, just feel absolutely nothing. Might as well feel like we're already dead. So a lot of the reasons why I would say that narcissists often, think that we have to be in control is, a lot of the things that I've already said before. We view things very hierarchically, as in who's on top and who's at the bottom, who's going to be calling the shots. And the idea of being the one that calls the shots is a very, appealing thing to a narcissist, obviously, with that being said. So I guess I wanted to talk about like from my point of view, and I wouldn't be surprised if, from a lot of like narcissists as well. Why is this need to, have control or have, any sort of power in our relationships something that's very prominent? I think we won't outwardly say it, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be aware of it because obviously, we try to shield this weakness from everybody a lot of times. We try to deceive ourselves, even that it's not there. So, what is it that I'm talking about? I guess, for lack of a better word, it would simply just be anxiety. So, I guess this is like one of the worst hells about having this disorder. I mean, I heard that there is such a thing as like have, having like a higher, what is it called? Like high functioning anxiety, let's say. And I think a lot of narcissists do work under this sort of, bubble. It's been a while since I looked at that concept. I'm already thinking to myself that might already sound a bit contradictory. But what you have to understand about being a narcissist is that a lot of this is very, contradictory in general. Like when you live your life thinking that you suck and thinking that you're that you're also the best, then yeah, there's a lot of identity disturbance there. And it actually does make sense to me, despite the fact that the experience still doesn't make sense. Like, I can rationalize it, I guess, to the best of my ability, but that doesn't make it any more confusing. So, when I do attempt to rationalize it, it's like I understand this logically, but I guess from like an emotional perspective, it doesn't really make any sense because emotions don't really make sense and they're illogical. But yeah, so high functioning anxiety. Like I said, I haven't like looked at that concept in a while, but at least like from what I remember or what that means to me now, even at the top of my head, I would simply describe it as a sense of fear is is a normal way to function in my narcissistic point of view, at least. Like, and the reason why I'm saying high functioning is that I'm not necessarily in this like stereotypical depiction of anxiety where it feels like, oh, I'm gonna go into like a panic attack at like any moment. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I think a lot of narcissists, such as myself, anticipate the worst in everything just to make the impact of it not as damaging or critical to us as much as possible. So, how this might manifest in control is simply because a way to soothe that anxiety of, let's say, other people screwing us over, screwing you over, or getting one over on you, is if you frame the dynamics whereas you're on top and everybody simply has to, like, bend over backwards for you, let's say, as much as possible, then yes, it does soothe that anxiety, because you know that when you control other people, it feels the less, unpredictable what they may or may not, do to you. So I can understand how a lot of this might come across as very manipulative behavior to a lot of people, but I don't necessarily think it like goes about that way. Like it kind of just feels like I'm operating under like a pure survival instinct like sort of mode, which we obviously all are. But I've always said that, if you're like a cluster B, I think like your notion or your awareness of like your survival instinct is just like on overdrive compared to like the average person, at least. So in a way, if you're a cluster B person, I'm speaking for myself as well as like a narcissist, you kind of walk on eggshells everywhere you go, but you're trying not to make that, slip out, obviously. And I think this is also one of the reasons why a lot of narcissists, such as myself, can be sensitive to criticism and can jump on the defensive, because kind of like what I said, because we live in this notion where we might try to control things just to make it more comfortable and like soothe our inner anxieties. People giving criticism or any sort of like pushback at all might like ruin the script we have like in our minds to make things, way easier for us. It does feel, I mean, I guess I should just come out and like say it right. It does feel a bit threatening, or like my, I don't know, like my sense of being is gonna get like trampled upon. And when you're in that state, when you're in that state of like survival, it is hard to consider anyone else but yourself. But there is suffering there, honestly. There is suffering there, despite the stigma wanting to say, let's say that like this is all just for like the jollies of a narcissist. Like it makes us, I don't know, feel better to control other people. Well, yeah, it does. I'll admit that, but it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily come from this like sadistic point of view that I've noticed it will be portrayed in a lot of like narcissistic abuse content. So I'm hoping that by making this video, it can give more of like a realistic perspective to, I guess, all of that that gets done. And it's interesting because I'm saying that, but then again, I, I can't imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end, perhaps. Well, actually, yeah, I do, because as a narcissist, you're also, always expecting, or, as much as anybody, I also have my fair share of, I think, being betrayed by people, imagined or not, I don't know. But yeah, if it's confusing for you on the receiving end, imagine just how confusing it is for me internally. Because having narcissistic personality disorder, it's always a back and forth battle between, I guess, wanting to retreat and just wanting the confirmation from, everybody around you, but you don't feel safe anywhere. Like, if you missed an older video of mine, I think I spoke about like idealizing love or something like that. I can't really remember what it was called, but I spoke about how it doesn't feel comfortable because you don't, as a narcissist, or let's just say a cluster B person in general, you don't really see your individuality in any sort of like relationship. So we split often because it it always gives this impression that like another person is, like getting one over on you, which is kind of paradoxical and weird, right? Because it's like obviously that's what we want, but another person cannot obviously satiate and, unbalanced, or simply like, no understanding of one's own self for yourself. So this is where a lot of like, the conflict arises, and it's a it's a very defining trait in like cluster B issues to like struggle with relationships. I think a lot of people like literally don't even understand. I mean, everyone goes through, I guess, like hardships in like a relationship, quote unquote. But I've reached a point even where I'm just like I'm not entirely sure if I can even have romantic relationships, let's say. Like it's something that I'm still thinking about up until now. Like I haven't given up on the idea of like love, quote unquote, but I'm not sure if it's something that I can naturally acquire for myself without any issues because it's a commitment, right? To stick to another person, especially a significant other. I mean, I know I would still get annoyed with friends if I were to like, hang out with them all the time. But there is more leeway to having friends because I don't necessarily have to be with them all the time. So I guess I can sort of see why when a lot of people do talk about like narcissistic abuse, quote unquote, and again, I'm not trying to contribute to that stigma. Obviously, it's often in romantic relationships because, like what I've said, you have to dedicate your time more to that person in comparison to like even a close friendship because there is a room to not necessarily be with them all the time. Like your friends also have their own lives, perhaps their own significant other, let's say. So yeah, I hope that that clears up a lot of like I don't know these foul stories that you might hear about like narcissistic abuse, and not everyone's the same, obviously. So I don't know, maybe that is true to a certain extent. Like some people certainly are just I don't know sadistic as the narcissistic abuse content like wants to put out, but a lot of that is also I would imagine also from my own personal experience, it's just somebody you know that has issues with, let's say splitting or like this high functioning sense of anxiety that gets manifested as, I don't know, let's say control freak behavior. How about that? So, yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there.